Good evening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching. My studio guest today is the Honourable Kristy Debono, who is the Shadow Minister for the Economy. And we're going to start by having a chat with Professor Michael Cohen, who's a specialist on modern political campaigns. And we're going to try and analyse what went wrong with the Trump campaign. Thank you, Kristy, for being with us today.
Thank you, Leah, for inviting me once again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Professor Cohen, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. We're very curious to have an analysis from you of what went wrong with the Trump campaign.
Well, in any campaign, particularly in modern campaigns, there's essentially two pieces of it. Number one, there are the issues that are around the campaign, that are permeating the campaign, that really are driving the campaign. And then there are the nuts and bolts of the campaign itself. And so the first problem that the Trump campaign had was it never understood what the electorate was really focused on. And as it is here, as it is, I'm sure, by you, it's focused on COVID. And so the campaign never really had a good message on how it was going to handle COVID, and in fact fell way behind on where they should have been. And then the second piece of it really is about the nuts and bolts of the campaign, and they really didn't spend enough time on certain states here in the United States and took their eye off on the ball on the kind of things that they needed to do in those states to win.
You're obviously a specialist on political campaigns and modern ones. Did you foresee what happened?
I think it was really hard to foresee what happened. I couldn't have guessed that, for example, Facebook and Twitter would have gone ahead and banned the president of the United States from their platforms toward the end. I think what had happened was that Trump had gotten so off the rails on his message and on his campaign that the lies just got compounded on top of each other. And so it really cast a pall on top of the entire campaign. And there wasn't really much that professionals could have done to really have helped him over the finish line. It's actually fairly remarkable that the campaign that he ran that was so message disjointed got him 74 million votes to Biden's 81. So to a certain extent, what that really does show in the United States that there is definitely a polarization in the electorate, which means that there is, a whole group of people on one side of the aisle, generally on the left, and then another one on the other side of the aisle, that would be the right. And so, it was really remarkable that he was able even to get to 74 million.
Absolutely. Do you think we'll see a comeback from Donald Trump?
He's thinking about it. It's been reported that he is not only thinking about it, but plotting his return. There is a somewhat of an opening for him. I mean, the election wasn't a blowout. It wasn't like Reagan and Carter in 1980, where there was a huge sweep in how many states he won. So it was fairly close by our standards. So there is an opening. The other thing that you'll see in some of the reporting maybe that you get by you is that our members of Congress are really going and talking to him and trying to engage him about what's going to happen in 2 years, because the next national election for us is 4 years from now, but the next congressional election is in 2 years. So it would be a sign to show that he was particularly interested in coming back if that goes well. So, for example, if the lower house of our Congress changes over from Democrats to Republicans, that's an opening for him to come back. And or if the same thing happens in the Senate.
What do you think made the Biden-Harris campaign so successful?
It was an extraordinarily disciplined campaign. And this is not something that Joe Biden has been particularly very good at in the past. And so the messaging was very tight. They did not do things that were sort of off of what their plan was. They raised a lot of money. Bringing on Vice President Harris to the ticket was actually a boon to fundraising. And they also had some really, really good folks who were working on the social media side as well as other kinds of parts of the campaign, particularly at the grassroots. One of the things that actually limited their upside was COVID. The Republicans went ahead and went door to door, knocking on doors and engaging voters. But Democrats didn't do that. And so to a certain extent, that difference between 74 million and 81 million, the 81 million was actually a little bit lower than you would find in a normal campaign because the Democrats did not do door-to-door knocking and engaging voters. And that was because of COVID, but they kept that sort of COVID-centric campaign together. And that's really what made the difference in the campaign for the Democrats.
So people saw them as respecting the COVID measures. That's what you're saying?
Yes, and it was a very consistent message, even to their own detriment. So in a normal campaign, even if they kept message discipline, they would have probably gotten 7, 8 more million of votes. But in this case, you can't do that because your whole campaign is about COVID. So if you respect COVID, then you know that you can't be knocking on doors, potentially spreading the virus and having big rallies like Trump did.
Thank you. Just very briefly to close off today, your personal thoughts, opinions on the US political situation right now.
My personal view on it right now is it's very much in flux. The President Biden is trying to sort of pull us back to our natural norms where, we don't have presidents who blow up Twitter and all of a sudden, engage foreign leaders there and, sort of trying to bring it back to sort of a traditional kind of way of politics. The Republicans haven't really figured out what they're going to do yet. They're infighting right now. So to a certain extent, what you're seeing in the United States is, 2 steps forward, maybe 1.5 step back, because there are a lot of Republicans who actually do want to return to normal. They didn't enjoy the whole Trump experience either. It actually made it very difficult for them to get anything done.
Thank you very much, Professor Cohen, for tonight and for, giving us these insights. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Your thoughts, Kristy, about...
I appreciate and I enjoyed listening to Professor Cohen. No, basically, I agree with most of his analysis. However, I also believe that the American people were in a situation where it was a matter of voting Trump or just voting him off. It could have been anyone really. It didn't necessarily have to be Biden. The campaign, I quite liked the Republican campaign, but obviously not Trump. So Trump was the odd one out in the campaign.
A stumbling block. Really.
Pardon? He was a stumbling block. Yes. Obviously. At the end of the campaign, especially then after the incident of the Capitol Hall, his name became toxic. I agree with Professor Cohen as well. Everyone, I believe, is dumbstruck by the fact that the American people had to go through such a horrid 4 years of presidency. No one would expect that the great America was led by such a controversial but yet scandalous and aggressive person. The principles of the Republicans, you can't just say that you are against all the principles, because there are principles, the conservative side of the Republicans, for example, that as Professor Cohen said, attracted more votes than what Donald Trump actually gained the first election that he ran. So there are millions of people who follow his principles, even across the globe. However, even if you if you agree and if you follow the Republican principles, doesn't mean that you agree with Donald Trump, and that's exactly what I believe have happened. When it comes to the Democrats, obviously the media was by and large in their favor across the globe once again. Biden was slipping at the end of the campaign as well. He was becoming more and more forgetful. In some instances, he was coming across as quite unprepared. But the message was loud and clear that America would not want another 4 years of Donald Trump, and I don't blame them. Donald Trump he had some faithful followers, but after the incident, as I said, of the Capitol Hall, I believe he lost a significant part, even of his most loyals. Commentators, Fox News, which was always very loyal to Mr. Trump, and yet even them, they started distancing themselves from him. Piers Morgan, one of his most vociferous loyalists, once again he distanced himself.
Yes,
he became extremely toxic. Michael Pence, his deputy, his vice president.
It's not a surprise.
It is not a surprise, but definitely not. His future, I would have thought that he would make a comeback before the Capitol incident. Right now, I believe he is completely burnt now. From the media that I'm following as well, it seems that all his family now his extended family has migrated to Florida, so they seem to have left even the capital city, New York City. So I find it extremely hard to tolerate that Donald Trump would actually be strong enough for a comeback.
Yes, I mean, I think many people hope he won't.
As he has been too aggressive, too divisive.
Well, he changed the face. He changed the face
of America and of politics in general as well.
As a female politician, what are your thoughts on the first female vice president, Kamala Harris?
Yes, it is once again another milestone reached by Kamala Harris as a female, the first female vice president. I don't give it too much weight that she's a female. I believe, however, as a person, it's only the beginning for her. I do see her as the next president of the United States. Obviously, there are issues that I do not agree with her, especially when it comes to issues like abortion and other stuff. So, but as a representative, as a politician, I admire her immensely, and I believe that she has come a very, very long way. She represents not only the females, but she also represents the African Americans, and so yes, I support her as a politician, and as I said, I do really believe that she will succeed.
She's very dynamic.
Biden, yes. So far, she has impressed a lot, and as I said, I believe this is only the beginning of her.
I'd like to discuss, turn to you and your portfolio that was announced last week, end of last week.
Yes.
Can we share with our audience exactly what your portfolio is all about?
Yes, my pleasure. Basically, now the leader, Dr. Bernard Grech, has granted me a portfolio which is extremely interesting and also ambitious. Yes, it is the economic portfolio and the financial services and the lands. So basically, I'll be shadowing Minister Silvio Scambri, his portfolio, which is economy and lands, and also part of Minister Clyde Caruana, who is the finance minister. I shadow the financial services sector. So I've been shadowing the financial service sector since I became an MP way back in 2013. So I'm very glad that I'm still shadowing it. And I'm very grateful for Dr. Grech for entrusting me once again with the sector. I've been showing bits of the economy as well since 2013. At one point I had the whole sector, and at some point I had parts of it. So now once again I went back to my roots, and the lands is completely a new sector to me. Please allow me
it's always nice having something which is a bit newish.
Yes, completely. Yes. However, since I became an MP in 2013, we've always worked as a team. So way back it was Mario Marco and Tonio Fenek, and myself were the economic team. And in recent years, it was Claudio Grech, Mario Marco, and myself as the economic and finance team. So I think the success of the opposition in this sector is that we've always worked as a team. Now Claudio has been entrusted with much more diverse and more important roles as well. The drafting of the electoral program of the opposition, the strategy of the party from the electoral perspective, the socio-economic impact perspective, once again, strategy of the party in the run-up to the election. So I must as well thank him for always,
so everything's falling into
for
place.
His input. Yes,
everything's falling into place.
And now we have Jason Topardi who'll be shadowing.
Yes, I'm going to have to stop you there. You know why? Because we have Dr. Francis Amit Demek, who's